When I got into the industry 2 weeks before the crash in 1987, so 35 years ago, people told us that the largest decision you would ever make was buying a home. Well, I can tell you 34 to 35 years later, it's really not buying a home for most American families. It's really, when do you take Social Security? We're going to talk about when can you retire and what should you do first on Consider This Program today. Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Soliven.
Grant, we are so happy to have you along. Grant is one of the manager of operations for our advisory team, obviously the central core to what we do at the Financial Enhancement Group. Great friend, college from Purdue University. He's got his degree in financial planning. Just happy to have you along, and you're a big part of the team. I'm going to let Grant take this over. What we try to do at the Financial Enhancement Group is to segment different parts of your financial journey into different areas. And one of those big conversations is Social Security. It is one of your greatest assets, and it's one of the decisions that people mess up the most often, in our opinion. So, Grant, we know, per the Social Security office, right, 70% of people take Social Security the minute they can get it. Why 100%. Is that, and what's wrong with that?
Yeah, so Joe, great question. And really it's fear-based, and it comes from old thinking that may have not been adjusted over time. So if you go back to where the economy was just a few generations ago, a lot of the workforce had manufacturing jobs. They worked for GM in factories. They worked for production plants out east and out west. And so one thing to remember and consider is that a lot of these individuals were part of unions. And so the unions would fight for their benefit. They would fight for their behalf. And the union would produce alongside these organizations. We'll use GM as an example because that's the one that we're most familiar with here in this state. And the union would say, okay, based on what we're fighting for, we're guaranteeing you that the company is going to come out and pay you X pension. So for all the years you've worked, Joe, our appreciation to you is the company will take care of you going forward through a defined pension plan, and we'll take care of your retirement dollars. We'll fund whatever your retirement need is in the future. Now, when the unions and the organizations were putting these plans together, they knew that this was going to be a big pill to swallow, even back then. And we had this other program in place for their benefit called Social Security. And think about it. I mean, it's basic math. Think about it. If I'm an organization paying a premium on the years you've worked for me the last 30, I have to pay you the next 40, I got to find ways to cut that cost down. And so in order to entice individuals to jump into the Social Security pool, early, they would increase your pension benefit right at the retirement age up until age 62 because they knew that was the earliest that you could take Social Security. And then once you were used to living off that income, they were going to drop it based on what Social Security was going to provide you at that age. So in order for you to maintain your standard of living, you had no choice but to take Social Security early because at that point in time, not a lot of individuals were saving assets, and we didn't have the Department of Labor contribution plans we have today.
Very, very well put. Sounds like you listened in school. Right?
Maybe once.
And it is precisely, it's precisely what happened. Now, you used a word, standard of living, that is important as it comes into how we view retirement, how we talk about your financial journey going forward. But it really, when you're accustomed to a check coming in every month, and all of a sudden that check is cut, right? You get into trouble. And one of my favorite mentors, Benjamin Franklin, I've read everything that I can find that Ben wrote or allegedly wrote, right? And one of the things that you hear me talk about is most men die at 25. They just wait for their bodies to catch up.
Yeah.
And I believe a lot of people today take Social Security for exactly the same reason that you just said. They lived in a different period of time, but they had already made a decision about how they were going to behave, right? And so when 62 hit and they could take the money, they took the money. Now, there are a lot of strategies that we have used and developed over the years for Social Security planning and other things. One of those is file and suspend, that we still regularly get somebody who asks a question. And if you've got a question, folks, do not hesitate to call 800-928-4001, or go to our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. You can submit a question. But, Grant, where are we with file and suspend, and what is it?
Oh, man. So file and suspend was arguably one of the most beautiful benefits we could empower our families with, meaning that, Joe, if you wanted to take half of your spouse's benefit and then allow yours to grow to age 70 to get an 8% increase year over year, I mean, I think it was close to 540 strategies we could deploy to maximize the efficiency of Social Security. That all went away April 30th, 2016. And essentially, here's what happened. If you're born after January 1st of 1954, then essentially if you hit full retirement age and you wish to file and you think or want to take half of your spouse's benefit and then let yours grow, that no longer is the case. Social Security has made it very clear. When you file for a benefit, whether it's your own or your spouse's, and you're born after 1954, January 1st, you're stuck with the benefit you pick. This is one of those areas where they took away everything. And so we often have families call in and say, hold on, well, I want to take half of my spouse's benefit. My first question to them is, what year were you born? And unfortunately, it really kind of eliminated a lot of strategy we used to employ. Now, it doesn't mean all the strategy is gone. We still have a Social Security expert on our team, Dean Huddleston, who puts together certain strategies for those that are looking to maximize Social Security. So since we can't file suspend, we'll still play with the age ranges. Does taking Social Security at 70 for both spouses really make the most amount of sense for certain situations based on standard of living?
And you brought up 8%, and you threw out that number like it was no big deal. 8% is a lot of money right now.
It is.
When is the optimal time, assuming that the tax code doesn't change, you have other assets, and your health is in good order?
Right.
When is the optimal time for somebody to take Social Security?
For us, based on those three factors, it is 70. And let me tell you why. So and keep in mind the factors that Joe just threw out on the table for us to remember, okay? So you're in good health. You've got other resources there. And so what do we do? The reason 70 is so important is because if you're full retirement age, so we'll use me for example. My full retirement age, Joe, is 67. So, and by the way, that's going to change down the road. At least that's my bet for me. But at 67 today, if I choose to get my full benefit at age 67, it's going to be X dollars. However, if I take it early, every year I take it to 62, because remember, 62 is the first year you can actually access your Social Security benefit, barring having a partner be deceased, et cetera, et cetera. But 62, so every year I take before full retirement age 67, that's a 6% decrease in income for a year. Not total, per year. That means I'm losing 30% of my income if I take it at age 62. Now, the other side of the coin is if I choose to delay my benefit to age 70, then I actually get to take an 8% income increase every year I choose to delay. And that is substantial for a lot of the families that we care for. Also, and the other big fact is taxes. Remember, if you've heard anything on this show, taxes. The later you can delay taking Social Security, not only do you get rewarded with an 8% income increase year over year, but we also are allowed and have the capability to make sure we play correct tax chess with the IRS while we still have the time.
Beautiful. So one of the strategies I know you're a big fan of and that we employ inside of the Financial Enhancement Group is the Retirement V for Victory. So walk us through that. What's that mean for somebody getting ready to retire?
Absolutely. And this is a hard strategy for some to understand because, remember, we're predisposed to taking Social Security as early as possible because the system's going bankrupt. And I'm going to throw this out there, Joe. As long as the federal government has the ability to print cash, probably not going to have an issue with Social Security, at least in the near term. So when we talk about V for Victory, the strategy is we delay taking Social Security until age 70 to get that reward of the 8%. But as long as you have tax-deferred assets, and when we say tax-deferred, we mean the IRS is going to tax you on every dollar coming out because they've allowed you to defer this income going forward. You've paid no taxes on it, so they're going to get their pound of flesh eventually. But we can now take the dollars out early on. We don't have this fixed income preventing us from fulfilling good tax planning along the way. So if you got $1 million in an IRA account and your standard of living is $50,000 a year, instead of relying on Social Security to pay that income, we're going to delay it, get an 8% reward, and begin to convert and or spend that IRA down so that if tax codes change in the future, which they will, 2026 is coming, then you're paying less taxes over your lifetime and in that period of time than you are today.
Well done. So here's what I want you to hear that he said. And this is what Grant would talk to you about if you call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com to get signed up for your next steps meeting. What we're talking about, and when we talk about delaying Social Security, so many times what people hear is that you have to continue to work longer. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, let's make the best use of the assets that you have worked so hard to accumulate, whether those be in IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, whether it be Roth money or non-Roth money. Let's make the most use of those assets today so that we can put you in two areas, the best tax situation for your future or for your heirs that we can possibly put you in. And secondly, maximize Social Security. When you bring all of those strategies together, suddenly you've got a financial journey that really makes sense that you can go forward in terms of what you want to get done. But people make so many financial decisions in what we call a silo. They look at one discussion, right? Is Social Security right? When should I take it? And what you really have to do is look at your view of your health, your tax planning, your other assets, and where you think the future of the U.S. tax code is going to be. Then you can make an adjusted decision that's right for you. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Get signed up for your next steps meeting. We'll give you 90 minutes of our best thoughts on things you should consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it into writing.